All right, welcome everyone. Hi, I'm Jeff, sales engineer here at D5 Render, and I'm thrilled to be your host for this session. Thank you all for joining us as we dive into the art of landscape visualization and explore ways to streamline the rendering process while achieving more precise and realistic results. As designers, we know that well-planned landscaping can enhance the overall impact of a project, but achieving that perfect balance of detail, realism, and efficiency can often be a challenge. That's why today's session is all about helping you refine your workflow and take your landscape visualization to the next level. So here at Me, we are thrilled to have Lingyu Li, a skilled landscape designer at RIOS. Lingyu has extensive experience in creating expressive and dynamic landscape renderings, and today he'll be sharing his best practices for achieving high quality visuals across different design phases. Through the live demo, he'll walk us through the Rhino D5 workflow, covering everything from concept design to schematic design and design development, all in today's webinar. So whether you're looking to enhance your design presentations, optimize your workflow, or improve precision in plant control, this session will offer valuable insights to help your work more efficiently and creatively. So without further ado, let's welcome Lingyu. Lingyu, please take it away.
Great. So today we're going to talk about how to efficiently improve our workflow through the different design phases. And yep. So I'm Lingyu. I'm a landscape designer based in LA. And today we're going to talk through all this content. The first part is what makes landscape visualization unique. And the second part, we can dive into our tutorial about how to transfer your design concept to final visualization by using brushing, and how can you transfer your schematic design to render, and how to do a really fast construction drawing or design develop painting rendering for like a day one rendering. We'll talk about this later. And the final one is how can we manage a large scale planting rendering, like a bird eye view? And in the end, we're gonna do some Q&A to illustrate your own question. So first part, what makes a landscape visualization unique? I think the first words comes to my mind are dynamic and also experiential. These two words together capture the vitality of landscape visualization. And I think landscape visualization is more than just a representation of space. It captures the essence of living, evolving through environment. I think unlike static architecture, I think landscape changes within time, climate, and seasons. A great visualization doesn't just depict a sense, it immerses the viewer in an experience. So to understand this, let's look at a masterpiece that embodies this idea. So first, in 1859, I think, Frederick Edwin Church painted this, The Heart of Edis. This wasn't just a landscape painting, right? It was a experience you can walk through. So Church combined this meticulous realism with dynamic lighting, composition, and makes the viewer feel like they were stabbed into the Andes. So every plant and every layer of different vegetation was carefully placed to create a depth and richness. The painting wasn't just about the mountains, the water, the sky. It was about how this planet defines this kind of a special atmosphere and told a story about the space. This is exactly what landscape visualization should achieve. It should transport the viewer and makes this space feel alive. So this brings us to the most important aspect of landscape visualization, which is planting. Planting, I think it's the foundation and the most defining features of landscape rendering. So among all like different elements in landscape rendering, planting brings the complexity, depth, and emotion to this sense. So let's look at like three different approaches for planting in a specific region. For example, like Pierre Woodolph. His design shows that the planting is not just some kind of decorative features, it's architectural. And these layers of grasses, different bushes, panels create movement, seasonality, and deep sense of space. And also, if we jump into some kind of tropical planting in the warm climate, planting is dense, lush, immersive. The interplay of texture and light creates this kind of intense sensory experience. And similarly, in tropical region, maybe we switch to another verdant and lush atmosphere like Singapore Changi Airport. This is completely different style, right? But equally impactful. This is one of the best example how planting can transform a space into another environment. So I think in nature, there's just not one shade of green, and like different layers, identical trees on the building doesn't, make this rendering making good, right? So how can we make render more realistic and capture this sense of nature? So I will show three different renderings in the D5 website, and this all renders are done by D5. So like this one, a strong lighting effect and mood and those complex and layered vegetation create this kind of strong spatial atmosphere. And this one is rich plant layering, especially from undercover grass, bushes, trees, everything. And like this complexity of vegetation create depth and realism. And the third one is like how can you play with use different climate, different trees, different location to transform your ideas by using the assets in D5. So I think these three examples demonstrate how D5 can be a powerful tool to achieve this high quality planting visualization. So now let's we all know like the planting is important, right? Like we talk so much how to achieve those beautiful rendering, but let's face back to our real world. I know all this sounds great, but everyone really cares about, I think, is how to improve rendering efficiency while maintaining quality. So in different design stage, like we always face some kind of like really tight deadlines and constant changing design ideas from your boss or from your leaders, from clients. So how can D5 save our day? So I will summarize my workflow through this whole process in different stages, and I hope this will help for you. So the first part I'm going to explain is the logic of my workflow, using presentation, and I will show a live demo later. So the workflow concept stage, the title I use, how to brush your concept, is I'm going to introduce the most important tool in D5 is how to use this brush to achieve your final concept rendering. So design ideas, are always abundant, but many clients really need to see rendering to truly understand your design, right? So the ability to quickly translate this idea from Sketch, from CAD, whatever you want, into visualization is really crucial. So I think in this stage, D5 is not just a rendering tool. I think D5 is a design tool. I think it's as important as Rhino, and it serves as a communication tool for discussing the idea with your leaders and client. Um, so the basic workflow is transform your sketch from your boss or yourself and into CAD if you want, or directly into Rhino to do some basic modeling preparation. And select rendering view in Rhino and transfer into D5. Select your D5 planting list, brush the view, and I will explain how to brush the view later. And do a D5 filter setting and done. We are done with rendering. So this is kind of like the basic workflow. I think in this stage, you don't need like really, really complex and delicate detail model. So I would just do really simple surface splitting. But in this stage, I think the only thing you need to care about is how to manage the material from your Rhino surface, because D5 only can read your Rhino material to split the material in D5. So that's what I'm doing, like really simple surface splitting, and select the view you like to use and do some planting list in D5 and brush the view I'm gonna show you later and render it out. That's a final solution. So this whole process, I think you can only take within 1 hour or even within half an hour to accomplish this kind of process. So the first thing you're gonna do is open your Rhino model. So this Rhino model is pretty simple, only pattern, nothing else, no delicate modeling stuff. So within this view, you can use D5 Live Sync to open up connect your D5 render to link your model to your D5, or you can import your Rhino model for here to import your Rhino model. That's totally fine. Like this workflow, I think you can choose by yourself. So in this view, the first thing I'm gonna introduce is this is a scene list. For example, you can add a scene here, and the layer is the logic of this layer is the same as Rhino, and this is the object you import from your Rhino, and here is like the environment, like effect you can manipulate, you can modify. So let's talk about brush. So first, I think the first step is to change the material. There are two ways to change materials. First one, you can open your assets, find like the material you want to apply, and click material, and then just apply into this sense. For example, like for this one, I would like to use water. Here, just download the water assets and click. Yes, that's great. And you can always modify the UV density here. For example, like I want to use 300 here. And the next one is how to change like the real grass material. You can click the material and switch to grass here. Yes, down. And also some like you can switch to like different planting grasses here. This one, something else, I guess. Here. This one, grass. Good. So at this stage, you can try to brush your concept. Is, for example, click the brush here and choose your planting list. So for this one, I'm gonna just choose the 3 showed up on my page. The maximum brush for like planting asset is 6. So something like this. You can always adjust the brush radius here, and also the planting density and the size. So kind of like this. It's kind of like drawing, right? So that's why try to illustrate this idea is how to brush your idea. And you can always layer your grass. For example, if I really want to pop out this yellow blue flower, so I can brush layered into different grass. And don't worry about like if you like your brush is oversized or what. I think the brush can only read the same material. If you're the first touch of this brush into this grassland, you will read. So if you exceed this edge of the grass, I think that's fine. It will always show up on your same material. And another thing is about trees. We're going to talk about this later, but at this concept stage, you can always choose whatever trees you want. And same process is double click this tree and place into the location you want. Something like this. Yes, I just quickly do this. And yeah, that's the whole process. It's really quick, right? And I think if the reason why I differentiate different surface within different material in Rhino is because if you have really like lush and abundant verdant filling, you can always use different brush to brush your like a Rhino surface and differentiate different design patterns here. I think that's really helpful. And the final step is you can adjust the navigation system. I always do walk because I can, do like really great camera angle here. So for example, like I choose here, walk 165. Yep. And yeah, that's kind of like a really straightforward process, right? And the final step you can do is click this button here, go to div curated. D5 D5 provide a tons of different filter you can use. Like for example, I need like over exterior overcasting or exterior day or exterior sunset, exterior day. Just choose whatever you want. And I think this process saves a lot of times for like post-production in Photoshop. And especially you can adjust exposure, shade, contrast, everything here. So the reason I'm say like brush your idea is to really efficiently to transfer your idea within D5 as a design to illustrate how this whole process. And I think that's like simple workflow to transfer ideas in D5. And the next one we're gonna talk about how to simplify your schematic design process. So I think within this process, I think it's the most important workflow I'm facing up and I am using in my working experience. I think in this stage, D5 becomes a fast translator, not just a creating tool. So it can be really quickly turn your Rhino design into a landscape visualization. So the first one is still, pre-processing Rhino. Use planting plan to subdivide and characterize the plant area in advance. And I keep emphasizing, the speed because let's face it, often face like tight deadlines. I think this workflow can save your day, truly. And there are three different features I'm gonna introduce within this workflow. The first is scatter in D5. And the next is the workflow, how to transfer your 2D design information from Revit or from CAD into Rhino and furtherly transfer this 2D information into planting assets in D5 to be a planting assets. So, and the third one is brush. We already know how to brush stuff, in D5, right? So I think this workflow is to introduce how to, like this is the CAD plan I got. I know you got like pretty complex like planting plan from your SD or from your DD, but I think the workflow is the same. And the next step is still your Rhino preparation. At like this process is really important. That's what I'm talking about, how to transfer your 2D information. You're gonna import your CAD block, like planting block, something like this, from CAD, like something like this, from CAD, and the remain it adds a block, and then edit this block to inserting to a geometry, like whatever geometry you would like to use. And the final step is export all blocks individually. Do not group them, and use D5 plugin, this kind of export features to export all the planting assets into D5. So the reason I want to talk about this is D5 can read your Rhino layer structure. So for example, for this model, I got 3 different trees. So I subdivide these 3 different trees into 3 layers, like T1, T2, T3. But I know you're gonna have like tons of like tens or like maybe 100 different trees. I think that's fine. Just subdivide all these CAD blocks into different layers. And then you can export by object selection in Rhino Sync plugin and keep the layer structure within 3 different layers. So when you export this CAD block into D5, you can always do like sync coordinate system, just do like import feature here to sync your coordinate system within your Rhino model. And then D5 gonna read the whole layer structure you placed in Rhino. And what you're gonna do is simply replace all this simple geometry to the planting assets you want to use. And D5 got 4,339 different planting assets. So I think that's good enough for like really like different location renderings. So that's the whole process. Within my experience, if I use this kind of workflow to transfer your CAD block into D5 rendering planting assets, I can use 5 minutes to complete this whole process. Just save your day. I know traditional rendering tools, we're gonna, plan high hand by hand to use Rhino model as a reference tool to, manually change the location of different trees. But I think within this workflow, you can simply done with it. And you don't need to re-export like different trees, just export like the whole CAD block and you're done. And you're done. And next one I'm gonna introduce is the scatter. I think scatter is as important as those export features because landscape visualization is not just about trees. It's not just about, planting like grasses and trees. No, it's got a lot of different layers of planting. So for this one, scatter is the tool that we can easily modify and simply place all this kind of bushes and undercover into your Rhino model scenes. I'm gonna show this later. So how to use your Rhino model to use this scatter tool. And also, the reason why I introduced scatter tool is because scatter can always sync your Rhino model modifications, which means you can just only do once this scatter this step, and all the Rhino modification will sync into your new D5. So you don't need to like relocate those brushes, like rebrush or rebrush all those undercovers, grass or something like that. Just do it at once. If you like have modification, I know we always have design changes by client, by your boss, whatever. just change your Rhino model, and the D5 can automatically sync your Rhino model. So I think that's really like great feature to save our day. So the final step is always, you can use brush. So within, I think the SD phase, the time I use brush is because sometimes we have like, aquatic plants. We cannot just scatter different aquatic plants into water. I think maybe this time we can still use brush to brush something like lily plant, something like that, to make your view really feels great. And final one is we talked about how to use D5 default curate to select different like filter, weather, or climate you want. So I think you can always save your own filters. So next time you have same location projects, like same client, maybe they want this kind of feeling, you can just use the same filter here in the final rendering. So here I'm going to show how to do this one. So first I'm going to illustrate how to modify your blocks. So here, for example, I import the planting plant block from CAD. And in Rhino, we can always like double click this block. And I just rename it as T1. You can add object, remove objects, at base point, whatever you want. For here, for example, I delete this one. I can add something else here, maybe just a box. And click OK. So the whole block gonna change automatically. And then I gonna type the block instance to select every single block. Just don't worry about those lines. D5 won't read those things. And click here, export. It will show up. Export by object selection. Keep the layer structure within 3 layers because we got plant, T1, T2, and T3. And just click export. Save your D5A files here and click save. And I'm done. And for here, again, open up my D5 rendering. I think this is the first step you're going to do is how to transfer your CAD block into D5. And then you can always sync your Rhino model into D5 Sense. Let's wait for a bit to open it up. Yep. So if you have already export your Rhino, like those block instance, just click, just hide those blocks and click this one, start live sync. So the D5 gonna change automatically when you change something in Rhino. So here I got like this material. So this what I'm doing is I'm gonna hide my old stuff here. Yes, and I click import, select your CAD block export file, set open, here, click it, let them loading, and place into your Rhino model here. And then, because you are exporting selected, it won't change your coordinate system. So you can always use sync coordinate system here to sync your location of those different trees. And the final step is switch back to object window here. And this is your new cat block export. See, 3 different structures. And you can click T1 and select every single T1 features you exported and select this one, replace from assets, confirm. So here I choose Mongolian, this one. It will change automatically. See this one, right? Close it up, switch to T3. Click replace assets. I just randomly choose the trees in my window, but you can always search like nature, flower trees, broadleaves, conifer, palm, shrubs, whatever you want. Like for example, I like to choose flower trees for this one. Yes, great. And for this, the size here, the unit is millimeters. So for this one, it shows the tree is 4 meters tall. So I can change to 6 meters. Yes, simply change it. So there's a default unit system in D5. And the final step is change my T2. Yeah, maybe I can adjust this one. Great. See, really simple. And if you don't like this repart, you can always delete it. And because when you do this step, all this kind of planting assets is a single model in this sense. And the next one, I'm gonna introduce how to use scatter. Like for example, like this one. I can hide it to make it more clear. Yep. So first step is always change your material, right? We have already introduced this in concept phase. So within scatter tool, so here add scatter to address your undercover. So and for this one, select material. Don't select model, because I think our workflow as landscape designer is always splitting your material inside the Rhino and then change material so D5 can read your material separation. For example, I would like to brush something, add more trees, like within this like planting pattern here, and click create. And in this area, click assets. If this doesn't show up, you can always click more and add assets here. So for this one, for undercover, you can always favorite your own planting here. So if you want to add like firm, okay, it will show up here. Click add assets, click favorite, add firm. Yes, so this will show up here. And if you're like using like this overall quality is not good, you can always click this 3-dot icon here and click minus. So it will delete automatically here. And you can always adding stuff, just do whatever you want. And the next one is how to modify your scatter. So I think like this quality is really bad, right? So how to modify this is first thing I'm gonna do is to change the planting density. So if I change it like higher to make it denser, and also if I want to highlight this yellow flower here, So I'm gonna click the name of this flower. Just bear this in mind, D5 vegetation always have Latin name. So if you have specific like vegetation you would like to use, just type search to search Latin name. It will show up. And you can adjust like scaling, the proportion of this plant in your planting area. For example, I make this bigger, and also the collision volume. So it will make cluster for you. For example, like if I change like this bigger, it will make it less. If I make the collision volume smaller, you will make like some kind of cluster within your planting area. So I think this is super great to use it. And if you would like to modify your like a scatter, you can always click this. The bottom of this material will be highlighted as blue, and you can always change the random scaling to make it more lush, more verdant, and also random offset, just whatever you want, right? And I think if you change your Rhino model, for example, like this one, I would like to change my Rhino model like surface. If you don't want like this one to be your design pattern, you can match your other design pattern here, or like change like new material. The D5 can always read and sync your this kind of design pattern here. So it will adjust your brush automatically. See, yep, that's what I got. And for this face, and yeah, also if you have some like water features in this area, for example, like I have some water here, you can also do like brush features, like select aquatic plants. For example, I would like to use this lilies, and click brush, create density you want, and I'm done. The final step is how to create your own default assets. For example, for here, I want to try to create some really warm and feel surrounded atmosphere. So for example, I click this one, adjust this one, and go back to MySpace and click create present. It will automatically save your own effect and environment, like all those settings in a sense. Just place a name, whatever you want, click save, and that's it. For next time, you can always just click, like for example, I would like to use this. Yes, really simple, really efficient. Yep. And let's switch back to our presentation. So I think the workflow is always, I keep emphasize how to do it really quick and how to really speed up your like transformation from your design information to visualization. I think D5 is a tool that we can to use to speed up our work. And I think the advantage of this process is accurate and also maintain your design logic within Rhino. Also, you can use SketchUp, just whatever you want. The logic is always the same. You don't need to do a lot of like post production in Photoshop or whatever. I think really just save your time and directly transfer your like design features from your sketch, from your CAD, from your painting plan, from the 2D information into this 3D painting assets, right? And so the next one I'm really want talking about. So I think in construction stage and also like CA stage or so maybe design development phase, we really don't need to produce a lot of renderings, but design changes always happen, and it's definitely inevitable. So from my experience, like client often request like kind of new renderings, even during the construction stage, because especially to visualize those projects day one status. So I think no matter what country you're working on, for different landscape object a project, I think I always encounter this situation is client want like a day one rendering. So maybe sometimes we don't do construction drawings. Maybe our contract is like ending within the DD phase. So within CD phase, like they change the design completely. Maybe yes, that's gonna happen. So we're gonna face like a totally different design plan, like planning plan or whatever we handle to ourselves, and client said, okay, let's do a day one rendering. I want to see like the first day my project's gonna look like. So for this one, I think the workflow is always like the same. If you have a like really complete planning plan, you can use CAD block export workflow to walk through this. If you have some kind of like hatch planting plan, you can do scatter or you can do brush to complete this. And also, I think within like this workflow, you can always end like this really headache, reproduction situation here. Uh, you know, that's my experience. It's really helpful. You can just directly transfer your really complex planting plan into Rhino and use the export features to this kind of a rendering and do all those rendered out. Yep. So the last one is large scale planting. So within the old days, if we use other rendering tools, I think this topic is the hardest one. Sometimes if you use like synchronize your model into different rendering tools, you're gonna place those planting trees or whatever inside of Rhino, like manually hand by hand, or you can use grasshopper to speed up your planting like strategy maybe, but it's really hard to control because Rhino is like super big if you do this, and always your computer gonna crash. Yes, of course. So I think for the area view, if we use D5, I think it's gonna really save your day and save your time for sure. I think because we already talked about how to use brush, use scatter, use export. I think that's just a tool. That's really easy to manipulate and easy to learn. I think that's just a tool. So I think for the area view, you can choose you want to use brush or you want to use scatter to do this. I prefer scatter within this space. And I think for like this kind of maybe during the concept or during the schematic design, the area view is always important. It will pop up on the first page of your PDF presentation. So I think that's kind of important. And so the workflow is kind of like the same. You do your model preparation, fill in the planting palette scatter, D5 filter setting, save your custom filter if you want, and finally render. Great, great. Yes, the scatter gonna change automatically when you change your Rhino model. Yes, select your brushes or scatter highlight area, change your create default filter setting, render it out. That's it. And I can open up this one to show another features I would like to introduce. Just wait for a second. And also, I want to talk about, just bear this in mind. I think for the error view, it always requires your computer performance. Yes, right? Because all those trees, like, different, even if you use brush or scatter, all those trees are model. Yes. So if you really want to do like big error view, even bigger than this, I know this is kind of not that big. If you really want to do really a complex error view, just bear this in mind. Watch your computer performance. It really requires a great graphic card and CPU to run it out. And also for like this kind of area view, I want to talk about is you can set up camera paths here and like editing a video and walk through like this design step by step. It will change the weather, the sunlight, the filter setup inside of this, like each sense you would like to use. So from my experience, sometimes I gonna, present my PDF presentation, for our client, for our consultant. But I think D5 is really a great communication tool because sometimes your client or your consultant really cannot visualize the vegetation performance and also the whole atmosphere you would like to achieve. So we can just use D5 to, change the sense, walk through your whole design, and they can get this kind of really atmosphere. Because sometimes you only use your Rhino model or some other modeling software. Like your consultant, maybe it's architect or engineer, they really cannot feel like the reason why you design this kind of path or whatever you're designing. So I think if you use DeFi, use this kind of bird eye view as a communication process, I think that's a better way to illustrate your design concept and idea. Yep. And the final, if you want to render this thing out, just select here, adjust aspect ratio. If you're like present on a computer, I always do 16:9, and present size, I think 4K or 2K is good enough. But if you want like a poster, really, really realistic rendering, I can do like 16K. But this really takes really a long time and requires you to have a really great performance computer. And also for option here, you can go channel, select, post-production, channel you would like to use, like Sky Mask, Material ID, all those stuff. And also for here, just change whatever you want. You will save your time. I always do this kind of post-production here, and then do some, really detailed and delicate rendering stuff in Photoshop. Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm want to talk about, like 3 different stages. So from my experience, I think that's just my workflow. And D5 is a creation, a rendering, a communication tool. It's a, you know, it's a tool that can significantly improve the efficiency and quality in landscape visualization. Whether you're in, concept, the SD, DD, CD phase, presenting to client. I think those tools you really want to use, especially like export and scatter and the replacement tool. So I think that's the thing I want to talk about today. Yeah. So always the final goal is save our day, save our deadlines. The efficiency is always the thing we really want to achieve. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. If you have questions, then go ahead. And you can also follow my linking here. Yep.
Great. Thank you, Lingyu. So yeah, as
Sure.
Lingyu mentioned, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask them. I was looking at the comment section, so a few questions did pop up that I can, start asking you right now. So somebody asked if you prefer to use the brush tool in the 3D view or if you prefer to do it in the plan view.
I prefer like it's different. So, for example, I switch up to Rhino. For example, if you have like a fully developed Rhino model and you have really delicate planting plan in SD phase, sometimes we don't do that. If you have really delicate planting plan, like you have different hatches, like different material separation, all those things are already done. I will do plan because it's really easy to select different material by using brush. So, and if you like really in concept phase, I would do like perspective because you don't really need to brush every single corner of your model, right? You can only just do like within this view to fake, we always fake things in rendering, right? To fake some like views, to add trees, add blocks, whatever you want. So that's my process. But I think if you have already have like complete and delicate planting plan, go ahead, use plan view to plan those things. It's really straightforward, I think.
Awesome. Somebody else asked if you had any tips for creating that feeling of depth in your renderings. Yeah, they've had trouble with adding atmospheric fog, etc., things like that.
I think this one is, let me open up my D5. I think my process is always like click default curated like here. If you do like an exterior area view, I would try. Like this is kind of like trying stuff. Like for
Hmm.
example, like for like this one, yeah, it's not that good for this project. So maybe I will try something else. Maybe we can like use, for example, like this one, like feel really flat, right? So for here, I can do environment custom my like sound directing or costume like use like a default. I always use midday because can show up some reflection, on the water. And fog, you can change fog like height or like the color of those fog. But I think this is kind of like a trying process. So that's kind of what I did, like to really use lighting system and the fog system here. And I think every view is always different than like 1 point perspective view or 2 point perspective view. So I think that's really depends where's your project, what kind of project you did, and what kind of atmosphere you want to achieve. And I think that's kind of like a post production. If you really cannot finish your like kind of like depths or like feeling you want to achieve, just do post production.
Hmm.
Just shrink your time, just do more like setup in Rhino and you can take into Photoshop or whatever, like Lightroom you want. That's kind of my process.
Nice. And I also had a question. So I saw you utilizing the environmental presets like from D5 Curated as well as you made your own. And I was curious to hear if you've created any scatter presets for your own library of like, things you might have to reuse in different projects?
Yeah. I always do that because you can always do like favorite your planting assets,
Hmm.
especially for scatter. So if you have like, for example, you have some tropical projects, I always do like a planting selection inside my folder set. Like this is my planting strategy for like a tropical project. And for the next project, you're still doing like same location project, you can always pop it up and you know save your time for like plan selection. I think. Yeah, I think that's really important. Just
Hmm.
build up, just use Rhino, use Rhino and D5 as a tool. It's just a tool, right? It's a
Hmm.
tool that can build up your own workflow. Just default your setting, I think.
Nice. Great. Thank you for that. Are there any other questions for Lingyu today? I think we might have time for a few more. Um, okay, I have one here from Robin. So Robin asks, could one cut a horizontal section a few feet above the ground, placing the camera in ortho and get a nice rendered plan view?
Yes, of course.
Hmm.
Yes, good question. So yes, so here I didn't talk about this because when you do like when you do projects in United States, we don't do that. We always bring your Rhino model or CAD outline into clear your like plan rendering outline and do like really a lot of post production in Photoshop, do an illustrative plan, right? But sometimes when you really faced up really tight deadlines, you can always. I did this a lot to use D5 to do illustrative rendering. That's what I did. So first you have your Rhino model here, right? And you're gonna click another view says that this is a tree, and you're gonna place every single scatter into your tree layers. So when you still use this kind of setting, I always do like really great exposure for plane rendering and close every single like scatter you are using and have really nice like material separation, like place material, like everything should look really clear. For example, like for this, it didn't show up because it's for our review, but when you do like really render review here, do really nice and delicate material separation and modify the shadow and render this view out once and then render your tree layer out and do just simply combine these two different image into Photoshop and do illustrative plane renderings. And if you have really delicate and complex planting like brush or undercover, so I will do like this, like preference, click rendering and switch down. You can do like 999 to make it the largest distance you would like to use, because this code distance means if you're like too far away from your model, those like brushes, scatter, those planting assets won't show up. So if you want to do like a plan rendering, I can do this one. Just preview output everything set to the maximum and then render all your plan out. Your scatter, your brush, everything will show up in this view. And you can always adjust, the this kind of quality using, if like for example, if I do a illustrative plan, I always do make the exposure and exposure out and saturation down, and then you can bring this to Photoshop and also bring your tree layers to Photoshop. And we're done.
Hmm.
Yes, that's kind of my process.
Awesome. Thank you. So I think that's all the time we have for questions. Let me go ahead and pull up the giveaway. So, first off, I want to start off by thanking Lingyu for taking his time to walk us through that presentation. It was very insightful. It's always great to hear how different users are using D5 in their day-to-day life and how, all these tools that are in D5 can be taken, how you can use them in your workflow. So thank you again for that presentation. And as for everyone who took the time to join us here today, I just want to encourage you to go ahead and scan this QR code, fill out the feedback survey, and then you'll get a chance to or you'll receive a 14-day trial of D5 Render Pro. And so again, thank you, Lingyu. Thanks everyone for taking the time to join.
Thank you, everyone.
And as Lingyu said, please go ahead and follow him on LinkedIn. So again, everyone enjoy the rest of your day and take care.
See ya.